You want us to mute?
אלוהי ניצול לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה אל אלי נפשי תירום ונפשי כעפר הכל תהיה אלוהי ניצול לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה אל אלי נפשי תירום ונפשי כעפר הכל תהיה אלוהי ניצול לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה ולמקד אלי נפשי תירום ונפשי כעפר הכל תהיה פתח ליבי פתח ליבי אלוהי ניצול לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה ולמקד אלי נפשי תירום ונפשי כעפר הכל תהיה אלוהי ניצול לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה ולמקד אלי נפשי תירום ונפשי כעפר הכל תהיה יהיו לי רצונים רפים והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Elohai Netzor Lashoni Meira. God, guard my speech from evil. Patach libi lefanecha. Patach libi. Open my heart. We've been called this week to look into our hearts. We are called this week to look into our hearts, both by our Torah portion and certainly by the words we heard on Wednesday during the inauguration, to consider our hearts, to open them up, to consider empathy. And Shabbat, of course, each week comes to ask us to look within. Shabbat, which is this taste of messianic times, asks us to look within as well, to open our hearts to the possibilities, to think about how and what we can do to bring light into the world. And so as we welcome Shabbat, of course, we light lights that remind us of the light, of God's light that we are to bring into the world. And we are delighted this Shabbat to, first of all, welcome all of you, and to welcome as well someone that you all know very well, Julia Weinstein, who is here joining us to light the Shabbat candles with us. Welcome, Julia. Julia is concluding her service on the WRJ board, where she has served since 2011 on the executive committee as a vice president of marketing, and most recently as a vice president of programs and education, serving women not only in Los Angeles, and certainly not only in our University Synagogue community, but blessing the women of the Reform movement around the world. So Julie, we're so delighted to be able to welcome you and honor you and congratulate you and thank you on the many blessings that you have brought to all of us, and invite you to lead us in the lighting of the Shabbat candles.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lechad lichner, shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you. We'll hear from Julia a little bit later in our service. So we turn now to welcome Shabbat, as we have done over the ages with the words of Lachadodi.
Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelecha ki mekor habracha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maseh b'machashava tehila lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela. Idurri, ki vaurei kumi ori. Shir daberi, kivod Adonai, alayich nigla. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom, ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, boi chala. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat nekabela.
If you are standing, I invite you to remain standing. If you aren't and would like to and are able to, invite you to please rise as we join together now in the Baruch Hu.
Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Come all of you, come all of us, bless the one who blesses. Come all of you, come all of us, bless the one who blesses.
We'll welcome Julia back to share this reading with us.
The gods we worship write their names on our faces. Be sure of that. And we will worship something. Have no doubt of that either. We may think that our tribute is paid in secret, in the dark recesses of the heart, but it will out. That which dominates our imagination and our thoughts will determine our life and character. Therefore, let us be careful what we are worshiping. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming.
And with reflections of Ralph Waldo Emerson on what indeed it is we are becoming, we turn to the Shema and its plea for us to look out at the world and see the unity among all of us.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai
And with the Ve'ahavta, we are taught of the ways in which we can remember the places and actions we can take which remind us of God's unity in this world. I invite you to join with Cantor Shapiro now as she leads us in the Ve'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We praise you, O source of hope, as the defender of justice for the oppressed, as provider of bread to the hungry. For you have implanted a measure of your spirit within us, that we might be your partners in healing the wounds that afflict the human family. May we always hasten to answer your call, to bring hope to the oppressed, to bring healing to the broken, to proclaim liberty to the enslaved, freedom to those in shackles. Crushed by the yoke of slavery in Egypt, our people were delivered into the light of freedom. Now let all be free, that we might all sing as Israel sang at the shore of freedom's sea. Nora, Tehilot, Oseh, Peleh, Nora, Tehilot, Oseh, Yimloch, Leolam, Vaed,
Adonai,
Adonai, Yimloch,
Leolam,
Leolam,
Vaed.
We've been speaking tonight, we are speaking tonight and reflecting tonight upon heart. And this portion of the service we now come to, the Amidah, speaks directly to our hearts. In the words of our liturgy, we speak about those whose shoulders we stand upon, who have given from their own hearts to us. And the power, God's power that comes mostly from the power of our hearts, from the moral courage and the moral strength of our hearts. And of course, the Amidah allows us the opportunity to join together or to take a moment of personal reflection for our own tefillat halev, for the reflections of our own hearts as well. And so we'll continue silently with the words on the following screens and invite you to take a moment for your own tefillat halev as well, for the words and meditations of your own hearts. And certainly if you would like to, as has become our custom, if you would like to share a prayer, a thought within our chat box as we do so, invite you to do that as well. We continue now, invite you to rise if you are able and would like to as we continue with the Amidah. As we do each week, we take a moment during this time to pause to consider all those who have been stricken, who find themselves ill, and who are in need of our prayers for healing, those suffering illness physically or of body or of spirit or of mind, those in need of our prayers of healing. As some of you have already begun to do, I invite you to place the names of those who you are praying for this Shabbat in our chat box, or to unmute yourself, and please feel free to share the names of those for whom you are praying for their healing this Shabbat by calling out their names.
My father-in-law, Jack Eder, Rabbi Morley Feinstein, my friend Michael Lovitz.
Josh Mills, Cindy Lederer, Roz and Sandy Weissman, and Rabbi Morley Feinstein.
Barry Richmond, Rabbi Feinstein, Roz and Sandy Weissman.
Also Roberta Smith.
Well, she's okay. She's okay. I see her all the time.
Nicole Altenberg.
We say Refuah Shlema. We pray for a full and complete healing for all those suffering illness in this moment as we listen to the words of Misha Berach. As we have been in recent weeks, we have been offering a prayer for our nation. Tonight, that prayer comes from our most spectacular U.S. Poet Laureate, Amanda Gorman, whose words we heard on Wednesday, her benediction for the inauguration. This is the end of another poem, a poem that she has written called In This Place, an American Lyric. And we offer the end of this poem as our prayer for our country this Shabbat. There's a poem in this place, a poem in America, a poet in every American who rewrites this nation, who tells a story worthy of being told on this minnow of an earth to breathe hope into a palimpsest of time. A poet in every American who sees that our poem penned doesn't mean our poem's end. There's a place where this poem dwells. It is here, it is now, in the yellow song of dawn's bell, where we write an American lyric we are just beginning to tell. Well, as I watched the inauguration this past Wednesday morning, I could not help but reflect back actually to Hanukkah and its retelling of the desecration and rededication of the temple. It seems to me that we have seen something similar play out over these past few weeks. The desecration of our national temple and its rededication this past Wednesday morning. More than that, Hanukkah depicts the banishment of a dark cloud of despair that had hung over the Israelite nation, brought there by the Greeks. Its banishment by the bright light of promise and hope. And I could not help but feel that I was witnessing a new light as well, a rededication to the ideals and virtues upon which this country was founded. Truth, justice, compassion, hope, to name but a few. Of course, those ideals and values are not uniquely American. They predate the founding of this nation by hundreds and hundreds of years, as you know. President Biden pointed that out in what has already become, I guess, probably the most quoted phrase in his address. He said, "We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural against urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts. If we show a little tolerance and humility, if we are willing to stand in another person's shoes for just a moment." Now, I doubt that President Biden knew that he was speaking about the hardening of hearts on the very week that we in the Jewish community are reading about the hardening of hearts from our Torah. Although as a devout Catholic, I have no doubt that he was very aware of the biblical reference. I similarly have no question that he was calling on us to take up the biblical virtue that is at the very heart of the Exodus saga, one I have spoken about before. At the very heart of the entire Jewish enterprise, I believe, really is the virtue of empathy. He may not have said it explicitly, but as President Biden was calling upon us, both individually and as a nation, to be less hard-hearted and more empathetic, he was urging us to be less like Pharaoh and more like God. In doing so, he placed himself in the rather auspicious company of 2 millennium of Jewish sages who have taught this exact lesson. In fact, it was a lesson I had just taught to my high school class on the Tuesday evening, just hours before the president called us all to this exact same teaching. With my students and for my students, this lesson came from the Talmud. And it was placed in the context of a discussion about the benefits of placing of placing a guardhouse at the entrance to a courtyard. The question is asked about the guardhouse being built at the entrance of a courtyard, given that it is a benefit to the people who live around the courtyard. Can an individual who otherwise refuses to participate in giving the funds to the building of the gatehouse, can that person be forced to contribute to the construction? The answer, by the way, that the rabbis give is yes. This person who lives on the courtyard needs to contribute to the building of the courtyard. And so began in the Talmud the first HOA fees. But actually, that's not the issue at hand. Into the midst of this discussion, an anonymous rabbi questions the benefit of a gatehouse. He asks, how can a guardhouse be considered an improvement? And then he makes this puzzling comment. He says, I know of a certain pious man who used to converse with the prophet Elijah. until a gatehouse was built at the entrance to his courtyard. And thereafter, Elijah would not speak with him anymore. Now, while this question is recorded in the Talmud, it is several hundred years before anyone bothers to respond to this interesting comment. And that is when Rashi, the great medieval French commentator, takes up the question. He, by the way, has no issue with the idea that a pious man is having a conversation with an ancient prophet. That's not an issue for him. What he wants to address is how a guardhouse could have possibly caused the cessation of that conversation. Rashi's answer is that the guardhouse kept this pious man from hearing the cry of the oppressed. Lafisha mafsik but oniim hatzoakim ve'ein kolam nishma. Elijah, who among other things plays the role of protector of society's most vulnerable, cuts off his conversations with this man when he was cut off from the voices of the oppressed. Now, for those with a particularly sensitive ear and an ear attuned to the words that Rashi uses, they understood that he, like President Biden many hundreds of years later, was referring to the story we have been reading in the Torah these past weeks. In the first parasha of Exodus, which we read a few weeks ago, we find these words. The Israelites were groaning under their bondage and cried out, and their cry for help rose up to God. God heard their moaning. God looked upon the Israelites and took notice of them. God hears the cries of the oppressed Hebrew slaves and with empathy takes notice of them. And as we well know, sends Moses to them and liberates them from bondage. But God, of course, is not the only one who hears the cries of the oppressed. A few chapters later, we read, then the foreman of the Israelites came to Pharaoh and cried out, why do you deal thus with your servants? No straw is issued to your servants, yet they, the taskmasters, demand of us, make bricks. And thus your servants are being beaten when the fault is with your own people. He, Pharaoh, replied, you shirkers, that is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the eternal. Be off now to your work. No straw shall be issued, but you must produce your quota of work. Pharaoh responds with a hardened heart. You lazy bums. So that's why you want to go pray. Forget it. Go back to work. By using words that those in the know would easily recognize and connect with the Torah we are reading this week, Rashi suggests that with the building of the guardhouse, that pious man, along with all the other residents of the courtyard, had taken a step away from God and towards Pharaoh. Now, to be sure, the building of a guardhouse is not the same as the callous disregard displayed by Pharaoh. But as we evidence, and as we have experienced with Pharaoh in this week's portion, the hardening of a heart does not happen in one fell swoop, not for Pharaoh and not for us. Often it is small actions that begin to wall us off from each other. Slowly our hearts become hardened until we find that we are no longer able to hear each other's voices. The question that underlies Rashi's comment also arose for me as I listened to the inaugural address on Wednesday. Who do we want to resemble? Pharaoh or God? Will we respond with hardened hearts or with empathy and understanding? It seems to me that in recent years as a nation, we have taken many steps towards Pharaoh. our hearts have been hardened. As our Torah portion makes clear, hardened hearts lead only towards darkness and plagues. Empathy and understanding are the path towards light and freedom. I have no doubt that these are notions that President Biden takes very seriously in his own life and in his vision for this country. Putting politics and policy aside, I think we can all agree that he is quite sincere about them. And I was hardened by his words to those that will serve in his administration, that hardened hearts will not be tolerated, nor a refusal to hear, or a lack of understanding and empathy, or the demeaning of another's dignity or humanity. Not tolerated. As he said, you will be fired on the spot. Of course, all of that, just a few days into this new administration, remains to be seen. It is only a vision, a hope. But hope is what emboldened and encouraged the Maccabees to rebuild and rededicate. And so I pray that we may likewise find ways to tear down walls, to soften our hardened hearts and open our ears, that we might turn the hope and promise of this new day into empathic and healing actions, so that we, like our ancestors in next week's Torah portion, may one day soon join our voices in songs of praise and our hands in joyful dance on the shore of freedom's sea. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will. Amen, and Shabbat Shalom.
It's all inside of you.
It's all inside of you. It's all in our hearts, and it is all up to us, which is what we reminded by the words we were about to say, the Aleinu. And so I'll invite you, if you would like to rise as we join together in these words.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We turn to words of remembrance, remembering that we do not arrive at this place alone, but rather by standing on the shoulders of those who gave their hearts to us, who opened their hearts to us, who taught us, who blessed us, and indeed, as we open our hearts, continue to bless us and support us and bring light to our lives. We remember first those that we have lost in recent days, those who will be laid to their final rest in the coming week. Maida Einhorn Pearl, mother of Mark, and Lisa, grandmother of Brandon and Chloe, and Jean Richardson, aunt of Scott Spencer and Cantor Kareth Spencer Shapiro. Remember as well those whose families are in the period of Shiva or Shloshim, the first 7 or 30 days of mourning for the loss of their loved one. We remember Karen Copeland, sister of Lisa Copeland, Pearl and Mark, aunt of Brandon and Chloe. Our Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Alan Freeling, husband of Lori, and Jamie Lynn Schaefer, sister of our early childhood director, April Schaefer, and Jason Woods. And we call to mind as well those whose yahrzeit is observed on this Shabbat, those who have died at this time in seasons past. We remember Nesser Banayan, Joan Becker, Millie Blair, Harry Kaplan, Abe Cohen, Rhoda Dane, Adele Fink, Sidney Galper, Francis Hurwitz, Bertha Hyman, Judith Kapoor, Mary Kraut, Sarah Kraut, Alvin Malkin, Seymour Miller, Lillian Miller, Sonia Nadich, Donald Robbins, Eleonora Sapashikova, Harriet Seelig, and Rose Topas. Of all of our loved ones, we say Zichronam Livracha. May their memories be always a source of blessing as we join together in these words, sanctifying our loved ones' memories. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavorach la'olam ul'almei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'ama v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all the bereaved among us, as we say, Amen. We turn now to the sanctification of this day of Shabbat with Kiddush. So I invite you, if you have a Kiddush cup, to take it and raise it. We are delighted to welcome Nick Melvoin to join us, who will lead us in Kiddush. Nick is retiring from the board of the Union for Reform Judaism, where he has served since 2016. Also, like Julia, who we honored at the beginning of our service, blessing not only our community, but sharing his many gifts and wisdom with our larger reform movement. So Nick, we want to thank you for all of the contributions you have made to the URJ and to furthering the progress of our movement, and congratulate you on your service. We're delighted to welcome you to lead us in Kiddush.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. And I am ready to just retire in general, but for now, I'll just leave it to the URJ. But and my Kiddush cup is in the kitchen, but I will raise a metaphorical glass and say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen.
Keep going there.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, Ratzavanu v'Shabbat kodsho v'chava ratzon hilanu zikaron lama'aseh v'reishit. Now I'll start channeling my grandfather and singing a little bit. But ki hu yom techilach lamikra kodesh zecher lahir tziyat mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim V'Shabbat kodshecha v'yachavra uvratzon hinhaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you for having me.
And we will if you have a challah, invite you to take up your challah. And we, with challah, of course, give thanks for the many, many blessings we share, for the hearts that we share from. So let's join with the cantor in blessing the challah and blessing this beautiful moment.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We conclude with these words, which pray for peace. Pray that the source of peace may bring peace to us, may bring peace to the world through us, through hearts that are softened and opened and empathetic, hearts that are turned towards truth and justice and bringing repair to our world. Let's join together as we can on Zoom and with the cantor in Oseh Shalom.
Oseh shalom b'imromav uyaseh shalom aleinu
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. On this screen, you'll see upcoming events here at the University Synagogue over the coming week. You can find these and more on the homepage of our website. And of course, as always, jewidathome.com, which lists activities that are happening across the community and actually really across the world. Want to call to mind in particular our observance this week, excuse me, of Tu B'Shvat, which will take place at noon on Thursday, a beautiful Tu B'Shvat Seder put together by the women of our sisterhood. And I believe more information and registration, I believe you do have to register, is available also through our temple website. So invite you to register and hope to see you on Thursday at noon for a lovely Tu B'Shvat Seder welcoming, an early welcome to spring. So we look forward to seeing you there. And as you can see on Friday morning, Cantor Shapiro, as she has from time to time, will be leading a meditation through the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. It is always a beautiful moment, and we hope you can join with her. I believe, Cantor, you have to register for that as well. Is that correct?
You can register through the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. If you just Google them, there's a place where it says programs for challenging times, and there's a daily meditation. I don't lead every day, but there's a daily meditation from 9:30 to 10 a.m. our time. And it's really wonderful to take part in. When I'm not leading, I often do join and sit with the group.
As long as you're doing it, would you like to say something about next Friday night?
I would love to say something about next Friday night, and I want to highlight, if not spotlight, my musical partner, Susan Rosenstein, who Susan and I have been working on Shabbat Shira for, there she is. Hi, Susan. For a couple of months now, working on creating duets with University Synagogue members. So it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful evening. I've been seeing a lot of my colleagues, and I'm actually taking part in another colleague's Shabbat Shira as well, recorded ahead of time, where they've invited a lot of cantors to come sing with them, and which is wonderful and lovely. But I really wanted to take, especially in this particular moment, to take an opportunity to sing with you, because I miss singing with all of you, and to invite some of our more outgoing temple members who are willing to share their voices with all of you. And I'm grateful for everyone who has participated in this, both either singing or instrumentally. So something really fun to look forward to. And I want to thank Susan, who has worked very, very, very hard to make this happen. So thank you, Susan.
Yes, thank you. And with that, we will say Shabbat Shalom. We're so delighted that you were all here to join us for this very special Shabbat, and invite you to unmute yourself so we can take part in our Shabbat greetings and brief Shabbat oneg.
Shabbat
Shabbat shalom, everybody.